everybody, it's Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your Gundog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your Gundog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week we're going to be talking all about the power of play in Gundog training and how it can supercharge your motivation, your bonding and your overall training process. Joining me this week is the amazing LWDG group expert Clare. How are you today, Clare?
Good afternoon, Joe. It's very exciting to be having a chat about this topic today. I love a bit of play.
Play isn't always a word that we see used in the very serious world of Gundog training. Can we start by talking about what we mean by play when we talk about it?
Yes, it is a way to bond with your dog, to motivate your dog, to build a connection with your dog, and it's really underestimated as a reward system for the dog as well. Play brings out a very different side in the dog, which can be so beneficial in training, but also in just teaching the dog also some impulse control. I use play a lot to help aid impulse control because the games have rules around them which can really help to develop that impulse control that we want from a gun dog. So you're right, it's not something that's typically talked about a lot in the gun dog world, but actually so valuable.
I think that maybe again coming from the old world of training where everything was very serious and sadly quite a lot of it was fear-based. There wasn't this thought of we can get results out of our dog with both of us enjoying them.
No, exactly. We talk about this a lot when we're talking to the members in our live Q&As that we do. And we talk about things like how the heel work in gun dog work can be very slow and for the dog, not very fulfilling. And we can use things like play to create more motivation in heel work, because if the dog understands that if they hold this heel position nicely for you and they walk by you, by your side, nice in the heel position, they're going to get a really valuable reward for that. And it doesn't have to be food. I think so often when people talk about rewarding the gun dog work, they automatically think about using food. But actually, the reward has to be something the dog values. And I have to say, for most dogs that I work with, once they're beyond puppyhood, and puppies are very food motivated, they're hungry a lot of the time. But once we get beyond that, actually, a lot of adult dogs get a lot more satisfaction out of a game, a play session with the handler as a form of release. And especially if they've had to do something very controlled like heel work or sit steady for a long duration of time, play can be a fantastic release for them from that activity.
For people who are listening now and they're like, okay, what do we mean by play? What are the sort of different types of play a handler can use when training the gun dog?
Okay, so again, this can be a little bit of an area where there can be some controversy. And where isn't there in the gun dog world some controversy? But this is actually an area where there's very old school train of thoughts that you can't play tuggy with a gun dog. Now, I'm not saying you can play tuggy with every gun dog out there, because there are some dogs that I wouldn't recommend it for. Maybe if you've got a dog that is a little bit hard-mouthed or something like that, then I wouldn't be playing tuggy with that dog. But to teach a dog to play tuggy in a fun way and to release when you're asked to, and using things that are very different from your retrieving articles, you can actually create a lot of fun with that dog. And I play tuggy with all of my dogs and they all really enjoy it. And they're all working gun dogs and that's never been a problem. And so many of my clients' dogs, we've used tuggy to improve their hold and to teach them a nice solid release, to improve impulse control. But there are rules around it. So we don't play tuggy with a dummy or with anything else that the dog is retrieving formally. So we have very specific items that the dog can play with and tug with. And it's just a really fulfilling game for the dog. The dogs really get into it. But sometimes you see people trying to play with the dog and they're almost smacking the dog in the face with a toy. I know that no one can see this because it's a podcast, but you can. And they're like going, come on then, get it. And like hitting the dog in the face with a toy. And I'm like, do you really think that's going to get anywhere with the dog? That's not really very motivating. So when you're trying to teach your dog to engage in play with a toy, it needs to be something like really interactive, something that you're holding on to and the dog is also able to hold on to. And you use it to bring out a little bit of prey drive. So you're like moving it around very quickly away from the dog, not into their face, so that they want to grab it and chase it. And so you can really get the dog super excited. And as I say, you can use that game to put some impulse control into the dog. The minute the toy goes still or you say your release word, the dog stops and lets go and just sits there ready to go again. There's so many things that you can do with that little game with the dog.
And there's loads of toys on the market that are used with like agility dogs and things like that.
Yep.
That are so far removed from our Gundog stuff that you could quite easily have a dog identify the different type of one's reward, one's work.
Yes, 100%. So I have very specific tuggy toy items that I have for my dogs. They don't look like a dummy. They don't look like a bird or anything they might retrieve in for real. They're just little toys. So one of my dog's favorite ones is a ball on a rope. It's a ball on a rope. So I like drag the ball along the ground. They grab the ball and play tuggy, and then I say mine and they release it. And it's all just part of the fun. But it's an interactive game because a lot of the time people think of play and they're just throwing the ball for a dog, just like throwing the ball away. And all that's doing is creating, yes, it's creating some drive to run out and chase, but then you're not part of what happens next. You're completely away from that. And what happens is the dog could run off and get it, but then the dog could go, well, see you later. I'm going to take this ball over here and do my own thing. And so it's not a game at all. It was just the dog chasing a thing you threw, and then they're off self-rewarding on their own. So that isn't going to be a way to engage with the dog, to build a bond with the dog, or to build an interactive game with the dog. That's more the dog just running off chasing something and then doing what it likes. It's no different to an informal retrieve.
And the thing is, this play time can be used to improve behaviours we want to see in Gundog training, as well as, for example, focus.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. A lot of people say that their dog will just see something moving and they're gone, or they'll say they're struggling with steadiness. The dog hasn't got the impulse control. But you can use games like you could use a flirt pole and teach the dog to sit when the item moves, and then use a release cue, move the pole again, and the dog then chases it. And when it stops, they sit. So you could then put your sit whistle into that. You could start to put that impulse control and steadiness into that. It's just thinking outside the box, but making the training more fun for the dog.
Do you think that this type of play as a reward, as a motivator, can help with dogs that might be showing a lack of interest in the work aspect of what they do?
100%. So a lot of dogs have got a lot of drive to run out, chase a thing and pick it up. But then the part that a lot of the dogs maybe don't want to do so naturally is to bring it back, the retrieve piece of it, the return and the delivery. So we can use these interactive games to improve the dog's desire to actually have contact with you when they're holding something, to bring you something. So we actually was doing this with our youngest dog. She loves to chase things and loves to retrieve, but the bit that wasn't natural was as soon as she got it back to John, she'd just spit it out. And what we noticed was she wasn't really into kind of this handover section, which is essentially your delivery. So John started playing a bit of tug with her. The next thing, she's just picking random items up off the floor and like shoving them in John's hand. Interact with me. So that game, that little game of tuggy, taught her that to get John to interact, all she had to do is put things in his hand. It was a game changer, absolute game changer.
It can also help us as well with physical conditioning, can't it? Because we tend to not acknowledge or not realize that sometimes what we do in Gundog work follows very similar patterns, like retrieves out and back and all those types of behaviors. Whereas if we suddenly bring in this play where they like play bow in, they move from left to right, they're doing all these types of things, they're now conditioning a whole different set of muscles.
Absolutely. It can be great for their core strength. It can be great if you've got a dog that's like really super soft mouthed and they don't hold the retrieve, they're dropping it all the time, they're a bit lazy in their hold. You can actually improve their hold. It seems to improve their like motor skills of their jaw, and they actually start to hold things better because through play, they're figuring out how to hold things effectively to get an end result. So it's like you say, it's great for their conditioning, it's great for their core, it's great for fitness, it's great for impulse control, but great also to teach them to hold things better of various textures and shapes and sizes, which a lot of the time the dogs have only ever picked one dummy that their handler maybe uses regularly. But the minute that item is then a different shape or a different size or a different texture, the dog maybe doesn't hold it as well. So it can really help with that as well.
Do you think this play can enhance communication? Can it be that where you've lost that connection or never completely built that connection with the dog, that you can use the play to deepen the bond and potentially rebuild trust and connection?
Yeah, definitely. There's been quite a lot of dogs who have been very lackluster on the return of a retrieve, and they just seem to have lost that pizzazz. And you can see they're doing it, but they're doing it because they've got to do it. And actually, as long as our timing is good, so the dog delivers the retrieve, we can then get that toy out, play with the dog. What you notice very often is the dog's return with the retrieve speeds up because it's in anticipation of getting this exciting play that comes after it. Because especially if you've got a dog that's maybe been oversteadied, steadied up a little bit too young, they just lose that bit of drive and love for the job. So you can use play to rebuild that drive and to put that passion back in. And the dog starts coming back faster in anticipation of the game that comes afterwards.
I think a human example of this is like when you parent youngsters, you're very much everything's excited. You encourage them to run back to you. You're pulling all these happy faces. You're super fun because you want them to engage with you and stay close to you and be with you. And then they get to teenagers and you're like, have you put on the dishwasher? Have you done the washing? And they get to the point they're like, the best thing for me to do is to just make sure I don't see you because then you're not going to ask me to do anything. And I think we forget that with our dogs that we are really good at encouraging and motivating at the puppy stage. And then when they've got it, we stop giving them that sort of input, that connection from our side.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you do get this percentage of dogs, you do get these percentages that are really natural retrievers and they do it for the love of the retrieve. But not every dog is like that. And some dogs need that little bit more. And this is where we sort of talk really openly about working with the dog in front of us. We say it every podcast, we say it in every live Q&A, but it's so true because not every dog is a natural retriever. Or they might be a natural keen retriever, but then something happens in the training and it changes how they feel about it. And then it's the dog's lost its drive. And instead of thinking outside the box and thinking, how can we reignite the passion? How can we get back those traits that we saw in this dog as a puppy or as an adolescent when it was running in enthusiastically and flying into our arms with the retrieve? How can we bring that back? Play might be the answer to that. Play might be the thing that reminds the dog, yes, when I was a puppy, I loved this and I can still love it now. We don't have to write the dog off just because it hits 3, 4, 5 and because the training has got more serious. Perhaps we've forgotten how to play with the dog. Because if you think about it, when they're puppies, like you said, everything is play-based. Everything we do with the puppy is play-based. And then we formalise it. And for some dogs, they need that ignition of that play. They need that to get them going.
I think where we see this as well across quite a few of our members whose dogs go on to work in a shooting season is where the dog has been perfect, and then the dog goes out and works with game, and then game is incredible to retrieve. So why on earth do I care about a dummy?
Yeah, you do see this. You do see this. So yes, so then you could use play to reignite the desire to retrieve canvas. But sometimes people go, yeah, but we're beyond that. Surely we don't need to do that now. Actually, maybe you do. It's like for us, if our job is not fun anymore, it needs to be fun for us to have the passion to want to keep doing it. And why are our dogs any different?
A recent example of this, right? And I'm sure people will listen to this and laugh, but as a kid, I used to love riding a bike. And as an adult, I started like hating it. You get to a hill, you're like, oh my God, the slog up here, I can't be bothered. So I was convinced that what I needed was just a basic e-bike, nothing fancy. And then I went out with Matt on it, and I've been spending time going out with Matt on it. And it has reignited my love for being out on the bike, because it's that little change, a little bit of help, that little thing that makes it fun again. And this is what we're talking about. It's taken what had become a slog and made it fun again for me. Now I want to like go and do it like every single day, because I'm enjoying it again. And it's the same for our dogs, isn't it? If you can't make something enjoyable, why would they want to do it?
Yes, exactly. And I see this a lot when I work with reluctant retrievers. Reluctant retrievers are such a good example for this. And when we say reluctant retriever, it could be a multitude of symptoms that would show as. So it could be a dog that runs out to the retrieve, sniffs it, and then wanders off. It could be a dog that showboats because of an experience it's had on the return of a retrieve. It could be a dog that plays avoidance and keep away, could be because of an experience that they've had when they've been retrieving. Some people might try to correct that by formal training and being like, the dog needs to do this and do this. Actually, had you thought about having a bit of fun with the dog and reminding the dog that actually coming into you is the best thing in the world? And there are so many ways of doing that. And we've talked about tuggy as being one of them, but there's so many ways. You can teach position transitions. You can teach the dog fun, flashy obedience. All of those things, the tuggy, the flashy obedience, the position transitions, they're all within your space. So you're building value in being in your space and interacting with you. And when you think about play, that is what it is. It's interacting within your space. So be creative and think of ways that you can interact with your dog in that space that the dog finds enjoyable, and you can use that to create and develop play to increase drive.
Yeah, because we might not think that this is like the biggest of problems, but like going back to exercise, when we are kids, we all run around, we all love it to death, we think it's fabulous. And then I think school starts making us a bit bored of it, because they put all these structured rules around everything we do. But also, I think the percentage, I think it's in the stupid, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody if you are listening and I'm wrong, something like 70% of women will give up exercise. And we used to love it. We used to run around as kids, but we give it up because it stops being fun, because we care how we look, we care how we do it. But what my point is here is, if we as adults en masse give up something we used to enjoy because it's no longer enjoyable, that should really drive home for us the need for us to keep things enjoyable for long-term continuation of our dog doing things.
Absolutely. You've literally hit the nail on the head, like literally. That is it in a nutshell. That is it. It is that. It's not, oh, the dog's got to this far, so now it should be at this level and it should be doing it all really seriously. Okay, some dogs will be cool with that. Not all dogs are going to be cool with that. And so then people might say things like, the dog has lacked drive now, the dog has lost its enthusiasm. It's like, okay, how do you reignite that then? How do you bring that fun element back into the training for the dog? It's important to consider this, not just go, oh, the dog's done, it's fed up of it now.
There are people who will be listening to this will think, oh, hold on, the minute I show my dog a smile, it gets ridiculously overexcited and goes mental. So do you have any tips for blending like the free play with intentional structured work with dogs that are overexcited? Do we do more with them so that they don't keep on fizzing every time we look at them, or do we dial it back?
So there are some dogs, I totally get what you're saying, but it would very much depend on the dog and the behavior it's displaying. But remember, you want play to be fun. So you can't take the fizz out of that and expect it to do the job you want it to do. However, things like having a release word. So just as you finished the formal piece, you use your release word before you put the play in. So the dog knows from that word that we've gone from formal to now we're having fun. But then equally having another word which tells the dog, okay, that's now done. And that's where that can improve your impulse control. So as long as you've got the release word that says, now we're not doing formal anymore, we're having fun, and the word that means, okay, now that needs to stop. As long as you've got those two things, you can, one, ignite desire and passion in the dog and build drive, but equally you can then teach the dog to switch that back off again and go back into that more formal mode.
Out of like your experience working with dogs doing things like this, do you believe that if a dog has play included in its sort of work life, training life, whatever we're going to call it accelerates their learning and skills in the formal stuff?
100%, yes, 100%. Play can, if you use play at the end of something formal and the dog is left feeling this real kind of like happy feeling, you've got that waggy tail, they're going to remember that whole session as a feel-good thing, rather than if it ends with the dog making a mistake and it's been told off. I can't think of a different word for it, but been told off, and the end of the session is like that. The dog's not going to be as motivated to get out and do a good job next time. If you can leave the dog feeling, what's the word I'm looking for?
Euphoric?
That is the word, Joe. We can leave the dog feeling like that about the session, there's going to be a much greater chance that the next time you get that dog out to train again, they're going to be like, yes, bring it on, let's do this.
I think that we have to change a whole industry's thoughts around this, don't we? We just need to say, look, it's almost a little bit like lighten up on the Gundog training attitude, because there tends to be this thought. Can you imagine, for example, going to a working trial and pulling out your tuggy? We're not there yet, are we?
No, sadly, we're not there yet. However, there are some amazing people out there doing that do play with their dogs. But I think maybe they're just not talking about it yet. There are people out there doing it, but they're not talking about it yet. And in other dog sports, people are talking about it. In protection sports and things like that, they really talk about play and motivation. They really talk about it. But for some reason, in the gun dog world, people are still not openly saying it. Yeah, I know that they're doing it, but they're not talking about it yet. I think it's just that opening up and being free about it.
If you think about it, actually, it's sort of making me giggle, because if you watch, my husband watches so much of police camera action, it makes me want to pull my own eyes out. But when you see the dogs that are doing like very, very serious work of finding criminals, probably one of the most serious jobs a dog can do, looking for explosives, things like that. And all those police have something to reward their dog with when they find someone, and they're really open with it, and they're like, this is why he loves to play with, this is his reward, and none of us look at it and go, they're not taking that seriously.
Exactly, that's my point. Why is it the gun dog world is so far behind on this? So far behind. We're trying.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I reckon they are doing it, and then what they do is it's almost like a part of their secret arsenal of training top level dogs, is they don't tell anyone about the play they do with them.
Yep. Why hold it a secret? Let it out.
Yeah, but then maybe it'll put an edge on who wins next time. Now we're putting conspiracy theories out there. We must stop. What, just to finish this podcast, what's the most sort of common mistakes you see when handlers are trying to incorporate play? So the people who listen to this are going to go play now. Where do they get it wrong?
Okay, so my top tips for developing desire and motivation to play: specific toys that the dog doesn't have access to other than when you bring them out as that reward. Don't smack the dog in the face with it, trying to get it to play with it. Build a bit of prey drive, drag it across the floor, get the dog chasing it, let the dog get it, let the dog hold on to it. And really, if your dog loves physical and verbal praise, when they've got hold of that toy, give them that physical and verbal praise whilst they've got the toy in their hand, in their mouth. Sorry, dogs don't have hands, do they? It's in their mouth. And and then put those toys away, leaving the dog wanting more. So you build that desire and drive to want to have that toy again. So when I built it with Rose, I used to then whip that toy out after an amazing recall. So her recall got really fast because she was like, if I come in really fast, I get that toy and things like that. It's really important they don't have access to those items that you're going to use for this interactive play at other times, that it just comes out and you build that value in it. Keep the sessions really short and sweet. Always leave the dog wanting more. If you've done like 3-4 minutes and the dog's like tiring, that's not going to build drive. So you want to stop while the dog's really fresh and wanting more to build that desire.
If there are any other questions you have for Claire on this topic, you can cover it in one of our live coaching or in our members chat. For those of you who are not members, join and we can help you with doing this perfectly. Thank you, Claire, for a super fun podcast. For those who are listening, we would love it if you would subscribe and review. That helps us to get more episodes out to the Gundog training community. And you never know, this episode might help people change the way they play with their dogs. Thank you all. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled Gundog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her Gundog alone. We'll see you all next week.